Today, Sanders released the housing plan, and we're going to read it, or rather, read an article about it, and I'll tell you why this is a significant thing that should be focused on for the five people who watch this. White House hopeful Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, on Wednesday released a 2.5 trillion plan to guarantee housing for every American. Sanders said the plan would guarantee every American, regardless of income, a fundamental right to a safe, decent, accessible, and affordable home, and will be paid for by a wealth tax on the top 1/10 of 1% of income earners. There is virtually no place in America where a full-time minimum wage worker can afford a decent two-bedroom apartment at a time when half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. This is unacceptable, he said. For too long, the federal government has ignored the extraordinary housing crisis in our country. That will end when I am president. Sanders' plan seeks to invest $1.48 trillion over 10 years in the National Affordable Housing Trust Fund to build and maintain 7.4 million quality, affordable, and accessible housing units that he says will eliminate the gap in affordable housing for the lowest income earners. It would also invest another $400 billion to build 2 million mixed income social housing units. He also intends to use the plan to end homelessness by prioritizing 2,500,000 or 2,500,000 National Affordable Housing Trust Fund units to house the homeless in his first year in office, and provide $500 million to state and local governments to help connect the homeless to case management and social services. The Democratic Socialists lambasted corrupt real estate developers for jacking up rent prices and President Trump for cutting federal housing programs. He says he would create an office within the Department of Housing and Urban Development to strengthen rent controls and tenant protections and make data on evictions and rent increases available to the public. Now, a lot of politicians, especially in that higher echelon of candidates when they're polling, in the top six, have put out various plans about things. And you might say to yourself, well, why are you doing, well, okay, yeah, this is, I guess, kind of significant, but, what's the big deal? It's like, well, the reason I put ignored in the title is because I've actually been channel hopping between some of the networks and just, trying to see what they're doing. And when I was on The Hill, the website, which is where I get most of my information from relating to the news, they had an article about this, about the housing plan, which is the one I read. And they also had an article about a proposal by Booker, some environmental stuff. And I ignored that one. I read a piece of it, kept on moving. But I go on to MSNBC, and they start talking about Booker's plan. They have him on. And I said to myself, whether you like Sanders or not, he's one of the top three, according to polls, Democratic candidates. So it made very little sense to me where he would be, or rather have his proposal ignored when a concurrent proposal by a candidate who's not even a lot of times at 3% anywhere is being acknowledged and having like a whole 20 or 30-minute segment dedicated to it. But this was my point that, when people who like him, like myself, say the media has some fixture for ignoring him or acting like his stuff doesn't exist, it's very evident here. We just had a major trillions of dollars proposal that the contents of which were stated by him, how it would be financed was stated, and there's no discussion about it on any of these networks. How the hell oh my God. That's why I said him, Tulsi, and Yang all have the same problem. I wish their supporters would realize that. It might seem like I'm just picking sides, but I covered the three of them more than the other candidates because they don't get covered by these networks. They're being completely ignored. Even when they put out big, massive proposals like a $2 trillion housing plan. I mean, hell, at the very least, when Fox gets a wind of a proposal by a Democrat where there's a seemingly hefty price tag, they're more than willing to go over there and go, "How are you gonna pay for it? How are you gonna pay for it?" And talk about it and tell you how ridiculous it is for at the very least a few minutes. And that's why you've actually had people saying that Fox has ended up being nicer to progressives than any of these other networks. because even if they're crapping over what you're trying to do, they still acknowledge what you're doing. It's like it's better to be acknowledged than mocked, than ignored, than um, forgotten, basically. Which is what the media is doing to Sanders and this plan of his. So, just another day in the corporate hood.